This piece of kit goes by many names: group shelter, emergency shelter, bothy bag, group bothy bag, group emergency shelter, whatever you want to call it. It's essentially a great big orange bag that you, your family, your friends, your clients, your group can get inside to protect themselves from the elements. But there's a range of other things that you can use this piece of kit for that aren't as obvious. So if you're interested in how else you could maximize any investment that you've made in this, keep watching. The first suggestion that's probably very obvious to you, dear viewer, but it's not obvious to everybody, is to use the damn bothy bag if you need to use it. I was chatting with a friend on one of the local mountain rescue teams summer before last, and she said that it's incredible once they go out and they rescue people how much kit can sometimes be in people's packs that they just never use, that they never deployed, including shelters such as this. She spoke of a couple of occasions when they'd been out to people that were hypothermic or borderline hypothermic, and when they'd gone through their packs after the rescue, found that they're carrying shelters such as this, they just never deployed them. So if you are carrying kit like this, then use it. Get practiced with using it even when you don't need it. It's a glorious day out there today, but I've still popped this up just so that I can familiarise myself with all the fastenings and straps and toggles and so on. My son's got a little bit of experience of being inside one. If you go out with family, friends, group members, your dog, anything like that, then practice putting it up, getting people inside it and just getting them familiar with how warm and how quickly it warms up and how dry and warm and out of the wind it can keep you. So first tip, if you've got the damn thing, then use it. It ain't going to save your life or anybody else's if it's in the bottom of your pack. Idea number 2. I don't know about you, but I like to keep my quite expensive inflatable thermarest in the tent and off the ground itself. So this is where something like your group shelter or your bothy bag can be improvised as a sitting pad or a kneeling pad. It does exactly the same job as your thermarest, but at a fraction of the cost if it goes wrong. Okay, I know I look like an absolute throbber, but at this moment in time I'm a very warm, dry, windproofed and actually quite perspiring throbber. There's nothing wrong whatsoever if you need to in turning your bothy bag, your shelter, into an external layer. This particular model has got a drawcord window, a drawcord portal if you like, that you can look out when you're inside the shelter to see what the weather conditions are. I've put my head through that drawcord portal, wrapped the rest of it around my body, and I must admit I'm actually feeling slightly warm and slightly uncomfortable. It's doing that good a job of insulating me. Clearly I've lost the ability to use my hands, so you'd need to think about the situation in which you use this, and I can't use a rucksack at the moment, but if you're in a group of people you may be able to manage them and provide this external cover for them. Of course it does allow my legs to be free, so I'd still be able to walk whilst wrapped up in this very warm, dry, windproof external layer. Idea number 4. Think about what this is for a moment. It's a huge sheet of fairly weatherproof material, so there's nothing wrong at all if you need to put more insulation under the footprint of your tent, or use it as an improvised footprint if you don't have one, to take this out. Often best done before you peg the tent out. And actually push it out and extend it out through the sides of your tent, underneath the footprint, underneath the bathtub floor of your tent, to provide another small, admittedly small level of insulation, but some level of insulation. It's providing more than if it sits in the bottom of your rucksack overnight whilst you're shivering. Idea number 5. More on this in detail in a future video, but I am not one of those people who take out a purpose-built pillow of any description for sleeping in the tent, much preferring to use the kit and equipment that I'm already carrying to fashion a pillow. And guess what? What does this look like? If I was to wrap a warm down jacket around this, we've got a perfect pillow. So idea number 5, your bothy bag, your group emergency shelter, can help to form part of your sleeping system by acting as a substitute pillow. Here's another idea for you. If you get cold during the night, despite dressing appropriately and being in your sleeping bag and so on, What I often do is I'll take the bothy bag out and I'll just drape it over the top of the sleeping bag, and by the time you've gone back to sleep, trust me, you can feel the extra insulation and warm air that's trapping. Now be careful with this, because this isn't breathable and you will end up with some dampness in and on the sleeping bag. It's not a great deal, and if you're out for a night or two, then that might be sufficient, but this isn't a long-term fix to choosing and selecting and taking the right sleeping bag with you. But if you do get caught out, if you do get those unexpected drops during the night, then this is a very quick way of being able to combat that, and it's very easily discarded if you get too hot. So there's another idea for how you might be able to use your group shelter or your group bothy bag. The other thing worth thinking about is that those shelters are orange for a very good reason. They're highly visible, which means that if you need to attract people's attention, either in a dynamic way by waving it at people, or in a more static long-term way, like I've done on that rock behind me, that means that people can see it from quite some distance, both from the ground and from the air, if people are out looking for you or you need to attract their attention. There we have 7 uses so far of how you could use your group shelter, your emergency bothy bag, for something other than it was designed for. What I really want you to sort of think about after this video is not necessarily just about the bothy bag and the bivy bag and so on, but think about what other kit you carry that may have a very primary purpose, a very obvious purpose, but how could it be used in other ways? How could you get more value from the money that you've spent on it, but also the effort that you take in humping it up and down the hills and round the woods? If I only ever used that group shelter as a group shelter, I'd use it once or twice a year, maybe a handful of times a year, something like that. By using it more often for other things that it wasn't designed for, I'm just getting more value and more return on my investment that I made in that. So I want you to have a think now. In the comments below, I want you to do one of 2 things. You could do both of them if you wanted. 1, is there another use for a group shelter or a group bothy bag that I've not thought about that you could use it for? Drop it in the comments below. Second thing, is there anything that you carry that has a very definite prime purpose, but actually you've discovered a way, like I have with the bothy bag, of using it in a slightly different way? Let me know in the comments below. And one final thing, it would be remiss of me not to say thank you to my cameraman. You may have noticed that not all the shots today were me doing sort of selfie shots. Some of them were me moving around and being followed around, and that's because yesterday, last night and the early hours of this morning up until now, I've been ably joined by this cameraman here, my son Finley. Now Finley's not just joined me to be the cameraman today, he actually did something quite significant over the past 24 hours or so. Tell them what you've done.
Set up my own camp, made dinner and breakfast and hot chocolate, and did my own setup.
Yeah, so Finley, as you know, if you've watched my videos regularly, Finley's come out with me many times, both in the woods, on the floor and in a hammock. He's come out with me in the tent, with me in a tent up in the mountains. But we decided it was probably about time that Finley actually took all his own gear out. So he's carried his own tent, his own sleeping bag, his own stove, his own cooking pot, his own food, his own water. He's basically been self-sufficient. He picked his own site, he pitched his own tent, he went through the whole routine. I guided and advised him where I needed to, which wasn't very often, to be honest, which was a real blessing. I could get on with my own admin. He did 99% of all the hard work himself. So fingers crossed it set you up for getting out more often with me and being a little more independent. So if you want to give Finley a little round of applause in the comments below, I'd appreciate it, and I'm sure he would as well. Keep watching, folks, and I'll see you in the next video very shortly, where I may or may not be joined by this able young man. Take care. I'm sweating in there. It's pouring off me, man. That is a sweat fest.